Hello and welcome to Pickleball Therapy, the podcast dedicated to your pickleball improvement. I hope you're having a great week. We just came out of a 4-part series on baseline and using the baseline to best benefit ourselves when we play, or best, gauge ourselves, I guess, when we're playing. This week, we're going to turn towards a strategy concept, something I've been working on recently. And it has to do with a question that's getting asked a lot out there, which is the soft game dead, right? Is the soft game in our rearview mirror in pickleball? And is everything now hard game? Is everything fast and hard? We're going to explore that this week's podcast. It's really going to help you play better because, part of playing better is understanding, right? It's feeling, calm and confident when you're out there because you know what's up. You know the real deal. You know the right answers to the questions out there. And this will really help you. As an example, I just got a question on the YouTube video that's been out for a little bit on the Into Pickle channel that has to do with, it's respect the X. So it's one of the concepts we're known for. And the comment was something about how a lot of intermediate level pros out there are still teaching forehand in the middle. And, it's very confusing when you're out there and you're like, well, I hear this and that and that. And, if you don't know the answer, it can feel overwhelming. So I sent this player to the a video that we have on forehand in the middle, because at the end of the day, what we want is we want you to know as much as we do about pickleball, so that when you hear something like forehand in the middle or the fast game, if the soft game is dead, everything's fast game now, you can go, hold on a second there, let's talk about it, and you'll be able to speak about it intelligently and adapt your strategy to concepts that actually work. Which reminds me that this podcast is brought to you by BetterPickleball.com. It's part of the Better Pickleball family because that's our objective at Better Pickleball. That is what we try and do inside everything we do inside Better Pickleball, is to give you actionable content that will help you really improve your play. Speaking of which, we have several camps coming up. We have some spots left in New York. We have a few left in Chicago, I believe, and I know that we have a few left in Tahoe as well. So if you're in the West Coast, Tahoe is going to be good for you to go to, and it's right there in CJ's hometown of Incline Village, New York. Who doesn't want to go to New York? And you get to check out the APP that weekend in Flushing Meadow. So it's a win-win situation. And if you come to the camp, you can even check me playing out on Thursday for the Team Cup event there at Flushing Meadow. And you can stick around for the weekend and watch some of the best players in the world play pickleball in a tournament setting. So if you want to check those out, go to betterpickleball.com. We'll put a link in the show notes as well, and you can check those out if it's time for you to do a camp. Also, remember, if maybe a friend of yours has been talking about a camp, or a family member, share the information with them. We don't do that many camps in a year, and it's a great opportunity to get on court with CJ and myself to learn really good stuff about pickleball and understand the game better. All right, let's I got one more thing to do. One more piece of housekeeping. If I don't do this, Jennifer will yell at me. So I don't want Jennifer to yell at me. So here we go. So I'm going to do a shout out here. Shout out for a couple of reviews. Appreciate you all leaving reviews. It's something that it's hard to express the importance of getting reviews nowadays. I don't know if you use Yelp and things like that, but I know Jill and I do, my wife and I do. And, if a restaurant doesn't have reviews and things like that, sometimes they don't get found. And it might be the best restaurant you've ever been to. Same thing with podcasts. If a podcast doesn't have enough reviews, if it doesn't get, the algorithm doesn't recognize it, we live in that world right now. And so that's why it's important. One thing I would ask is if you have not yet subscribed to our channel on YouTube, even if you're not an avid YouTube watcher, if you can go on there next time on YouTube and just click on Pickleball Therapy and click subscribe and hit that little notification bell. Again, it tells YouTube, hey, people like this thing. Couple of reviews we got recently. One from DCA 5101 on Apple. Thanks for the information you provide. It helps me to get my head straight. Happy to do that if we can. I like to listen right before I play. It helps me have a better pickleball game. And that's why these podcasts are the length that they are. And then the second one was great resource by Satirus76. I like that name. A perfect podcast to listen to on your way out to the courts. And that's, again, why we do the length of the podcast, what we do. And thank you very much for those reviews. Again, it's helping. Does it help us feel better with the podcast? Of course it does. Everybody likes to hear nice things. It's very nice to hear from you and that. But there's the more practical is what I mentioned, which is allowing us to reach other players who, just like you, hopefully will benefit from this podcast. All right, let's dive into the main subject of today. Oh, we do have a riff later. It has to do with bowling. You're going to stick around for that. You'll see why in a minute. All right, let's talk about, is the soft game dead? Okay. And, There's more conversation out there about the fast game, about how pickleball is becoming a hard game and a faster played game and things like that. So I think I'd be remiss it'd be silly to suggest that there isn't pace in this game, right? There certainly is pace in this game. There are, bangers are a part of the game, and it's not a criticism. It's fine. You play pickleball however you want. The question is, from a strategic standpoint, is the soft game, in fact, like something in the past, right? And so what we're going to do to determine this or to figure this out is, what we've been doing is studying the best in the game. Okay, the best pickleball players in this game, to see what is it that they do to consistently win medals, right? They're consistently winning at the highest level. So what strategies are they using? Now, as we go through this, let's be clear. The conversation we're having here isn't a direct, like you take the words that you hear coming out of my mouth and you implement those words directly. The words I'm sharing with you are to increase your understanding of the sport, right? At a fundamental level in your mind. In other words, at a really core level with your brain, to help you understand better what really works and what doesn't work. That doesn't translate directly into do this on the court and you will, you do this to just do this and you'll be amazing, right? By itself, without some other understandings. And at the end, I'll talk about that a little bit more. Particularly if you're already in our pickleball system, if you're listening to us and you're a system member, the system is set up to help you with your game from soup to nuts, so to speak, right? A to Z. So stick with the program in there, right? Listen to this, understand it better. You'll see how everything starts to fit better together as you have a deeper understanding of pickleball. But this podcast is not designed to it's not a roadmap podcast. It's a deeper understanding of the game podcast. This particular episode. Well, they all are, but this particular episode is a deeper understanding. So I want to be clear about that in terms of how, before we get too far down this road on this soft game. So let's talk about the best players in the game. So the two best teams in pickleball, by far, are Ben and Colin Johns, the Johns brothers, and J.W. Johnson and Dylan Frazier. Okay. Now listen, just to be clear, no disrespect to any of the female teams, any of the women's teams, and that is not the point of this. But objectively, the two teams I just described will beat out all comers. They would beat any team that you put across from them, consistently, not 100% of the time, but you would definitely bet your money on either the Johns brothers or JW and Dylan right now. There's a couple other teams that are coming up, like Diascu and Tardio are really strong. But right now, the two teams that are the best are those two. So when you study those teams, what you notice is that those teams rely on a soft game approach to pickleball. Now, can they hit the ball hard? Of course they can hit the ball hard. Dylan, JW, and Ben have competed. All four have competed in singles. Colin hasn't competed in several years in singles, but they all have reasonable singles careers in terms of their work. So they can hit hard, right? They can drive the ball forehand, backhand. They can get it done hard. But when they play doubles, right, and they're playing against the other really good teams, the strategy that they implement is a soft game strategy. We refer to this strategy as Chapter One Pickleball, and I'll explain that more in a second. But the idea is that what I want you to start wrapping your head around is that these teams win, and they win a lot using primarily soft game shots, soft game strategies. And let's focus on the serve side. Okay, let's focus on the serve side right now in terms of how they play the serve side of their game. Remember, on the serve side, you start off every rally at a disadvantage, right? That's how this game is constructed, right? That's framework. That's what we call framework inside the system and all of our teaching. So you start off at a disadvantage right on the serve side every single rally. So the question is, okay, how am I going to solve this puzzle? How am I going to, play the best I can given the fact that I am at a disadvantage? The way that these two teams do it, almost without exception, is they use the paradigm shot of pickleball, which is the third shot. And the reason that the third shot is falling out of favor some with instruction, right? With us, like coaches, we start to use, like long dink and other terminology, is because sometimes players will get fixated on the number, right? On the prefix third. And so that's basically like, I don't know if it's a prefix, maybe a qualifier, but third shot, right? So if I hit my third shot this way, it's not the fifth shot or the seventh shot. The reality is that the third shot the third shot drop continues to be the optimal shot to hit anytime that you're on the serve team or the serve side and you're at a disadvantage, right? Meaning you're not up at the non-volley zone line. So these players use that shot consistently and pretty much exclusively while they're not at the non-volley zone line. In other words, to get up there, to overcome their disadvantage. Because they understand that pickleball is won from the non-volley line. That's where rallies are won or lost if you're not there. So what they're using is a soft game shot, the third shot drop or the long dink, in order to overcome that disadvantage that they face when they're playing. So what they'll do is they'll work their way up from the baseline to the non-volley line, right? Pretty much exclusively. They're not attacking. What they're not doing is they're not attacking from the transition zone, right? From no man's land, no person's land in the middle of the court or from the baseline. They don't drive the ball a lot from back there. You don't see them winding up and delivering, haymakers from back there. What they're doing is they're calmly and methodically working their way from the baseline all the way to non-volley line. And then once they're at the non-volley line, then they execute a very disciplined grind approach. And what I mean by that is it's all soft game, moving the ball around. Every once in a while, they'll speed it up. But for instance, even there's some differences. If you look at the four players I mentioned, the one who's most likely to attack from the bounce when the ball bounces is Dylan Frazier. Second would actually be Colin Johns. Ben and JW hardly ever, if ever, will speed up a ball that has bounced, right? So if the dink bounces, they're just going to dink it back. Now, they'll try and put pressure on you, right? They'll try and move it around, but they're not going to attack from the bounce normally. Now, Ben and JW are both deadly if you give them, it's not even a pop-up. It's just a ball that they can do something with their, primarily with their backhand. JW does more with the forehand than Ben, but with the backhand, they both attack it. If the ball's around net level or a little bit under net, they'll flick that ball sometimes to create some pressure, some offense. But other than those situations, they are dinking and dinking and dinking. And that's why, some folks think that the men's pro game at the highest level is boring because it involves a lot of dinking. And that's okay. I mean, you're entitled to your opinion on what you think is interesting pickleball or not interesting pickleball. But I will tell you that strategically, it is amazing. It's to watch. The discipline that they have, the way they grind through the points, because a lot of times they're facing opponents who want to, in fact, they want to speed it up faster, right? They're sooner. They want to get into the situation sooner. And what JW, Dylan, Ben, and Colin do is say, not me. I'll play for 7 hours if that's what you want to do. I will grind with you for 7 hours because I know that I can outwork you. Forcing their opponents then to make mistakes, right? Try and speed balls up either into the net, out, or get counterattacked by their opponent. But big picture, if you look at the way that they play, it is what we would call Chapter One Pickleball. And Chapter One Pickleball is fundamentally sound pickleball. It is pickleball that utilizes the clear understanding of the way the game is built, right? The court we play on, the rules that we play with, and just to round it out for you, the number one most important rule in pickleball in the rule book is the non-volley zone. That is the rule that defines our sport. If there wasn't a non-volley zone, we wouldn't play pickleball the way we play it. We'd be doing something else, right? I mean, we'd maybe playing the sport, but we'd be playing it totally differently. There would be no third shot drop because a third shot drop would just have the players come up to the net and smash it at you or drop it or do something. It's not possible to hit the shot that we hit in pickleball if you don't have a non-volley zone, right? And so, the Chapter One Pickleball says, I know how this game is played. I know I need to be at the non-volley line. I understand that there's a non-volley zone on the other side. I understand the shots and strategies that I can use to get the job done for me. And I'm going to implement those basically relentlessly, like with discipline. I'm not going to vary from it. And that is what those teams do. So when they face another team that might be a good team, I mean, the other teams they face are very, very good teams, right? It's almost without a doubt that Ben and John, or Ben and Colin, or JW and Dylan, they're not going to be able to get through both those teams. So, like, if you saw a tournament where you had both the Johns brothers and JW and Dylan in the same tournament, right? Number 1 and number 2 seeds is what they normally present as. It'd be hard to bet on anybody else. No, if you could choose one of those two teams or the field, you would take one of those two teams because they're more likely than not to win that tournament. And again, what they're doing is using a soft game, Chapter One disciplined approach to pickleball. So what does that tell us about the state of our sport? It tells us that the state of our sport is not that the soft game is dead. In fact, the soft game is alive and well and is being used by the teams that know how to use it the best to win gold medal after gold medal after gold medal at the highest level of our sport. If you want to check it out visually, you can go to Into Pickle. It probably will have published by the time that this podcast airs. We have a video on the soft game being dead where I contrast two styles. I contrast JW and Dylan in an APP tournament against two very good players, right? Will Howells and, I think I got that right, Will Howells and Ryler DeHart. Two excellent pickleball players, excellent athletes, right? But the match ends 11-3, 11-3 in favor of JW and Dylan. And when you watch the match and you watch the highlights that we'll share with you on the YouTube video, you'll see how the strategy that JW and Dylan implement and execute, the Chapter One Pickleball, basically is just dominant in that match. Again, 11-3, 11-3, right? Not a very close encounter. Again, no criticism of Ryler and Will. I mean, they're fine athletes and good players, but strategically, the JW and Dylan strategy is what wins out in that game. Now, I mentioned to you that I'm going to give you a caveat here. There is a sort of caveat to this in terms of application, right, for players, and this is why it's dangerous to hear these kind of things just in the abstract like this, or to read something on Facebook or an Instagram post or something, and all of a sudden you're shifting your entire strategy around this concept that you may only be seeing a piece of and not really seeing the big picture of. But for example, if you were to take this strategy and just apply it, right, soft game strategy, it's going to work great, but you can't control your opponents, right? So you can't force them to play a soft game. Your opponents will want to come hard at you, right? So if you're going to play a soft game, right, which we advise, right, because soft game, here's the thing, right? Hard game, if you come from tennis, you have a hard game probably, right? Or racquetball or something like that where you know how to hit the ball hard. You probably already come preloaded with that. If you don't come from a racket sports background to pickleball, it's very difficult to like just pick up a hard game. That's any good, right? And so, you know, is that the right approach, or should you take the soft game approach, right? Because here's the thing, even if you came from tennis or racquetball and you don't have a soft game, you're going to be toast eventually. You'll run into your clone, your mirror image on the other side who plays a soft game and has a hard game like you, and you can't compete. So the soft game is necessary for everybody, right? If you want to play a well-rounded game, and it's usable in and of itself, right? The thing you need to add to it, or make sure you have as part of it, I should say, is you need to have a decent stress-resistant mechanism. So you need to have a decent block volley. And this is the one that's always the trickiest. You need to be able to let out balls go. If you can't let out balls go, you are going to be toast against fast game players because they're just going to keep hammering balls at you. As long as they clear the net and if you're willing to hit it, makes it too easy. If you want to know more about out balls, we have a whole decision tree. We have a whole course on that. It's the Bangers course inside the Better Pickleball Academy. You can check that out. But basically, you know, the idea that I wanted to communicate in this podcast to you is that, in this episode to you, is that the soft game is not dead. And the soft game is alive and well and is being used by those who know how to use it well to win a lot of times against teams that don't apply a soft game approach, a Chapter One Pickleball approach. So as you think about your game, don't despair, right? Don't say, oh my God, it's going fast and I got to learn how to drive the ball and I got to do all this stuff, because that is not the case in our sport. All right, let's go ahead and dive right into the Riff. I already told you about the Better Pickleball Academy course. You can check that out on the Bangers. I think you're going to enjoy that. And you can also be on the lookout for our, we have an amazing presentation at the upcoming summit, as well as an upcoming course with our friend, a young man, and one of the players I just mentioned, Dylan Frazier. And he talks about how how the soft game is in fact not dead, and how it's how he evolved himself from a 3-5 player, which he was when he first started, to being one of the top pro players in the game with a soft game. All right, the Riff. I just want to share with you a quick story here. This is, I read this this morning, I believe. Yeah, it was this morning. And it was, let me read it to you. So this is a post that was in our, in a Facebook group that we have for system members. It's a closed group. So if you're not a system member, sorry, you can't join this group because it's a system communication. But this is really interesting how, talking about how the system, but how the mental approach can help your game, right? So this is from Nancy. She says, I love how the TPS applies to much more than pickleball. Now I want you to, if you're not a TPS, if you're a TPS member, great, keep it that way. If you're not a TPS member, you can replace it with the pickleball therapy concepts, right? Because there's overlap, and what we teach inside the system, is the same kind of stuff we talk about here in this part, right? In the mental part. So yesterday I was bowling in the National Bowling Tournament in Reno. Started out good with a 167. I don't know. I think I might have done a 167 one time in my life, maybe. Second game went south with a 105. 7 splits. Yeesh. Starting the third game, instead of lamenting on my lousy luck and what I did wrong, I put that behind me and focused on the process and my breathing with each ball thrown. Ended up with a 192, which I have never scored a 192, and that's better than a 167, right? So many ways to benefit from the system. Thank you, CJ and Tony. Can't wait to meet you at my camp next month. So, the story is this, right? What I wanted to leave with you is this. The concepts that you learn inside the system, if you remember, or inside pickleball therapy, right, a subpart of the bigger concepts, will help you with more than just pickleball. And I think it's helpful to think about pickleball as a part of a much bigger picture, which is you, right? You as a human being, and your growth inside pickleball extends to your growth outside of pickleball. So hopefully that helps you. As you think about how to devote, where to spend your time and how to devote your time, listening to these podcasts extend well beyond potentially winning an extra game or an extra few rallies during a pickleball session. All right, that's this week's podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Remember, if you can rate and review it, please do. If you're interested in any camps, check it out in the show notes. And as always, please share the podcast with your friends, because you may have a friend out there who's likes pickleball, but maybe they're a little bit in the weeds right now and would really benefit from the concepts inside pickleball therapy. I'm guessing if you listen to the podcast, you enjoy it, and they probably will too. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time.